Welcome to the Circle of Enmity, Toth and Zorn 8-Man Nightmare Mode Guide. My name is Rondo and I'll be walking you through this fight. Currently we are using 2 tanks, 2 melee, and 2 ranged DPS, and that is required for this fight. When you begin the fight, everyone in the group will receive a green debuff that will wipe the group unless everyone gets 1 heal. We found the best way to get through this is to use a med pack. This will remove the debuff without having to use any of the additional healer's mana. Like hard mode, we have similar mechanics throughout the fight. Yellow circles will spawn on random players that need to be put under Toth's feet, and then you will run out when they turn purple. Red circles will also spawn that will turn into spikes that will one-shot you if you do not move out of them. The tank that is on Toth will also need to position himself at an angle to the boss as shown here. This will allow for the opposite side's healer to help both sides due to the added healing that is needed in this fight. The angle allows for the healer to get closer to Toth's tank without taking added smash damage. The Zorn tank will need to have his hip to the tree for optimal distance. Using these positions, the tanks will have the bosses separated about 35 meters, negating the increased damage buff that they will get if they are too close together. Look for the lightning arching from their bracers to show if they are too close. The tanks need to position themselves with their backs against something due to the knockbacks. This is why we have you next to the tree and the rock wall, as we have stated before. There will be transition phases at 90, 70, 50, 30, and 10%. At these points, range on Zorn will need to be at 30 meters or further from Zorn, or they will get a debuff called Fearful that will one-shot them the next time they do damage to Zorn. This is also why the tanks need to switch immediately when Toth jumps to Zorn. We found it is easiest to just have the range at 29 meters at all times, so they need to only take 1 or 2 steps back to avoid this. We got through this easy by having the melee on Toth calling out percentages 2% before the jump. This allowed for the range to be ready and back up before the jump. Due to these jumps, though, it is also very important to control the DPS on this fight and keep the bosses near the others' percentage. If one group is ahead of the others' DPS, is going to have to be adjusted. Also, to reiterate, it's going to be really important to have the tanks ready to switch at this point, because if the tank that is on Zorn hits Zorn with the Fearful debuff, he's going to get one shot and it's probably going to be a wipe at that point. It is up to the tanks to separate the bosses after the jump. This can be done in 2 different ways. One is the tank swap. In this way, the tanks trade spots. They try to stay in the same position that the other tank was in. At this point, they're also switching bosses. Boss swap, which is the number 2 way, is where each tank just taunts the boss that's on the other side and the bosses just switch where they were, the tanks stay in the same spot. It's preferred at this point, and this is how we did it in the video, to do the first way, because that way the DPS are moving a lot less, which allows for them to put out a lot more damage. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to go over the circle phases that I showed you earlier in the pictures. At 80 and 40% is when we're going to get the yellow circles on a random player. These circles need to be taken under Toth's feet by that player until it turns purple, and then you run out. In this phase, additionally, the healers will need to be ready to throw out large heals on single targets due to the rocks that Zorn will be throwing at the raid members in this phase. This is going to be an area where you need to be ready to throw out large heals on single targets, like I said. At 60 and 20%, we're going to get the red circle phase. This comes after Zorn starts slamming his fists into the ground. For this phase, everyone needs to stay out of the red circles. The spikes that follow can one-shot DPS and healers. Healers in this phase need to be ready to bubble everyone and to pretty much stay on the move while healing. If they take too long to heal in one spot, there's more of a chance to take periodic damage from the red circles. So as long as people are staying out of the spikes in this phase that come from the red circles, the damage over time should be able to be mediated by a Sorc healer or bots from an operative. Alright, additionally on the Toth side, he will be putting out a debuff on the tank periodically throughout the fight. It needs to be cleansed ASAP. The tank can call it out, the healer can just get it as soon as possible. It is preferred to have a Sorc healer on the Toth side, who will be on the right with the melee. His stomp, that is Toth's, will be doing damage and knockback, so you can use your circle of healings and your bubbles to keep the melee and the tank topped off. When Toth and Zorn jump to each other, The melee DPS need to run out to the Sork healer, who should have a circle of healing waiting for them. After this, the tank will separate them again. The melee is going to want to wait for the first stomp. Then the melee can force leap, force speed, or run back to Toth so that they don't take damage from that first stomp. During each phase, the DPS needs to make sure that they're calling out the HP percentage to make sure that the bosses are going down at the same rate. When one dies, the other one will enrage and start one-shotting the group, so it's vital that they die at the same time. DPS will need to be adjusted if one group begins to fall behind. When Toth and Zorn die, their handler will jump down. The tanks need to pick him up and put his back against the wall, making sure that the boss is facing away from the group. He is a tank and spank, of course, and other than the red circles that everyone needs to move out of, he's really easy and he cannot be interrupted like he used to be. Alright, so that concludes this fight. I'm going to go ahead and let it just finish out so everybody can see what the end looks like. Thank you for watching Circle of Enmity's first guide. There'll be more to come. There's going to be PvP, 1v1. Subscribe for more cool videos of Star Wars The Old Republic. This is Rondo, and I'm